All right. Stream should be going. Right. And with that, I think we're going to just jump into this. We've got numerical order. I think it's the way we're going to go. Team 37. And so if Team 37 wants to get videos up, get ready to go. I'm going to get my stuff. We got what are you guys looking for in terms of guest experience? So what do you want from us?
Leah, how many people?
4.
All right, 4 guests. This is you guys are running on, you're running basically on PC, right?
Yes.
All right. Mo's running a Mac, so Mo's going to mostly watch the experiences that are PC oriented. All right, so 4. All right. And how do you want to do you want us to start running it right now? Who do you want shared screen? Is there any details of that?
No, you can run it as well. And we also have another much stable version that we just uploaded after the midnight, probably around 1 o'clock. You think we're available to use that one? Like both version is fine, but the second one is better.
I'm going to use the one that's submitted to Perforce. Wait, which one is that?
I think there are 2 up there. Both are in interim 2 folder.
Yes. Peter, can you point it out?
It's the one called build test HDRP 011117 1am.zip.
Very honest.
We just won't make it clear.
Is there a build from, so that's the only build that's submitted, is that correct? Am I looking at this right?
Yeah, I think it
Both of them
somehow delete the old one.
I can still see the 7:50 p.m. That's the one for testing. Is that it?
So there is no build submitted on Perforce that was submitted before the deadline? Is that correct?
I guess I have one. Yeah.
Yeah. Now we have another version of sometime, but the 1 a.m. version, that one is much better. It's more stable. Like the 2 is pretty similar, but this one is stable for the networking.
Okay. I guess I'm just checking in the terms of like what was submitted on time. And I mean, I appreciate the fact that it's not being hidden. But there is no, I guess for clarity, there is no build here that's submitted on time in Perforce. Like I'm looking at the.
So from looking at the history, I think the one that was submitted for testing is deleted.
I somehow still have it on my end.
Because like both of us have it downloaded for testing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have the testing one on my ETC desktop.
All right. I guess we'll go with the one that's submitted here. Let me extract it. Not super thrilled about the fact that it's turned in late and it's the only build that's there. All right. And we should all just start running it?
Yes. We have tutorial inside it.
I guess, and which screen do you want shared? We're gonna do we do my screen? Are they all
It's
equal?
usually the same for now, so whoever wants to share, just one is fine.
All right,
Yeah.
I'll share my screen. That. this. All right. So I guess do I create name? Does that do it? All right, I'll give you a name. And we need to create a room.
And you can also see the tutorial right now before you play.
All right, let's do that. Ooh. Velocity, move camera, sprint. It's on, I'm guessing, shift. Yes. All right, no, so I'm reading this like no mouse. It's like my interpretation here.
Yeah, no mouse.
All right.
Oh, and by the way, the sprint is disabled for now.
What do you mean the screen is disabled?
So basically, you can't
The sprint.
sprint,
Oh, sprint.
right now.
All right, gotcha. All right, hold, attack, camera move. Got it. All right, I make a room. Ready. Good.
Hold on, trying to figure it out. I have. Okay, there we go.
Okay. I'm gonna start the game. I'm just gonna do this.
Yep, sure.
All right. I can hold things. I gotta hold down the button to do it. And boom. Grab. Go here. Thing. I know really where I'm going.
Wait.
Camera.
Here, you want to caching the thing
Yes.
on your.
Yes.
Ah.
Here. So I got something from that.
Oi.
There's another big blue thing. Over there. A lot of stuff. Big blue thing. Probably represent. Are you saying the other person? I don't know. So the J button is up. What is the K button again?
Yeah, I think you almost just finished everything. Check out right now.
The timer was supposed to be 60 seconds, but for debug reason, it's like 500 seconds. And when the timer ends, there will be like a scoreboard, and you can see how it's doing, like how everyone's doing.
All right, should we close this out?
You can press escape to exit to the lobby.
Good. Put that down.
Yes.
All right. So, I mean, how about you guys fill in a little bit like what the world is and what you're sort of like building to here?
I can take that, I guess. Our world is a Black Friday sale, and currently there's one character implemented, but there's going to be 4, and you're racing to get as many things checked out as possible in the scene. And depending on which object you are carrying to the cash register, you can attack other players with them to like steal their objects or just like mess with them. There's a few animations that are implemented that we didn't see, but you can like hit someone over the head with a TV and like yeah, there's a bunch of other specific actions you can do. But yeah, it's just a racing timer game.
And the basic controls are move around, pick things up. So K picked things up.
J does.
Jay. Now it's Jay.
What does K do? Did K?
Attack. When
Okay,
you have
and you can only attack if you're holding something.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like trying to remember the keys because I had pickup working, but I couldn't remember what K did, and I think it was because I couldn't pick anything else up anymore, and so I was in that state where there was no way to know. I kept hitting K and nothing happened, but it seems like I was not in the state where it was supposed to be happening. But yeah, no, the setup and the play, like picking the big rectangles up. The rectangles were the only thing I could pick up, right?
For now, yeah.
Yeah, that is right now. It's only the cube.
Yeah. I mean, like that worked really well. The characters have like a nice. I really like sort of like the look of them. Like you've got sort of they're exaggerated in a way that suggests they're going to fight in some sense. Like there's just sort of I think just a nice aesthetic there, and like they look. I think when they start to fight, like I think we're sort of in a space where mostly like we're running on picking things up and cashing them in. I like that makes sense. Like I think they're sort of like the characters that fit that world. Obviously, there's like where it is right now with like sort of limited. You can only get these few things, and the idea of fighting, I think, is not really happening yet. And I think part of that is it's not clear that fighting is a strategy that makes sense at the moment. And I think one of my big reactions is when I got into this, one of the things I felt was I didn't exactly know where to go. I didn't exactly know what to do. And the level wasn't really helping me. And so like a little bit of a balance between what is built so far, like in terms of like possibilities, and you have the TVs aren't exactly TVs, and there's not too much to suggest that like swinging them is going to be something that happens. It's something that I want to do. But the thing that I sort of hit more than that was just the layout of the level, and like where the other players were, and like where the cash register was, and like I think some of that comes down to just like camera and camera controls. And like just that feel of it. You got a space that feels kind of tight at times, which is very store-like. But that like there was a part where I was like looking for the cash register, instead of the space feeling sort of like open and like an environment where I was like, I need to fight. I need to like get my way to the cash register or prevent other people from getting there. I felt more like I was like going through like these shelves and trying to get to a space. And so it felt more constrained than it did open. And I think that would be one thing I would really look at is this a world about shopping, or is this a world about fighting? And like that's going to be something that you got to sort of set up, I think, more strongly for the guests, is like this is like the fundamental design question is how do you get the guests to fight? Because this is not necessarily a world about running and grabbing things and just cashing them in. This is a world, in theory, about picking things up and using them as weapons, and getting all the excitement that comes from that part of it. And I think this short playtest, we could have fought, right? Is that true?
Yeah, that's right.
And it didn't really happen. And I think that's the sort of like the design challenge is how do you get guests to fight in this space? And when you guys talked before about the items we pick up, you were going down the path of sort of just a few items that you can pick up and use. Is that still the design? Like this is a world about sort of limited items to buy and use as weapons?
Up till yes, we might change that, but for now, yeah, it's only the 4 items.
And I think that's the other thing that I was sort of running into was this world is full of stuff, but I had a lot of moments of like, can I pick that up? Nope. Can I pick that up? Nope. Can I pick that up? No. And that I think that also feeds into just the feel of what is this about? And I would look at that as well. Mo, you were watching. what were you
Yeah,
sort
can
of?
I add a note to that? Because I think you're hitting on something important there. There's a huge discrepancy between like the boxes lying around and the retail on the racks. And I would converge those two things together. Watching it, it looked like you guys worked there and were trying to put inventory away that shouldn't be out. Not only that, the retail is a huge opportunity for creativity here. If I pick up a certain item, is it a better weapon than other items, or other items that are not as good as weapons worth more in terms of retail value? So I would try to utilize that more and go there more and kind of get rid of the boxes on the ground type idea. I love the character design. I love the walk cycle. I like the dust kicking up from him. Those are all good choices. The actual retail and inventory kind of feels like a little more realistic of a world, and I would probably look to exaggerate that and caricature a little bit more. There was a little bit of a ground plane issue too, where I'm sure you noticed the feet are going through the ground. So I'd look into fixing that. And I think another item that will help in terms of like, now I can attack, is like the visibility of system status, right? So it's like making it evident that I'm able to now press the K button in somewhere in the user interface, or the animation, or a combination of, several elements where it's like, okay, I can actually use this other item now. I would make totally agree about the camera angle and things feeling crowded. I think you want things to feel crowded in the right way. Usually in environment design for games, we make things bigger because when you're in a world, if you make things to scale as they really are, things feel really tight. But I would think you'd want things to feel crowded in terms of, in the spirit of Black Friday, like it's going to need to be more than 4 players for that to make sense. Otherwise, it's just kind of like a normal casual shopping trip and people are just being really aggressive. But if you had like Fall Guy, obviously this wouldn't, it's a bigger scope, but like Fall Guys feels like a Black Friday experience, right? You have people grabbing, clutching, it's just like mayhem in the sheer magnitude of the players playing at once. I would look into solving that in a creative way, not necessarily trying to get 100 players into your game.
How do you guys want the guests to play this? Like, what do you want the opening moments to be like?
We are gonna.
Oh yeah, I just thinking you're going to say. So we're thinking about like maybe like white chaos. Because they're trying to grab something, and to some of them they are more chaos, so they're trying to hit other people, forget about a victory, and some of the people they're trying to check out as fast as possible.
Okay, so you have 2 strategies here. One is like grab stuff and buy it. Other one is grab stuff and attack people. And one question for you guys is, how are you going to get guests to like evenly split across those strategies? Like, how are they going to understand those strategies? How are they going to know that that's kind of what this world is about? And I'd be a little skeptical that you're going to get people to legitimately split. That like, 4 random guests, 2 of them are going to be like, I'm going to buy stuff, and 2 of them are like, I'm going to fight. And so you may, if you really want those strategies, if you really want a sort of an even split along strategies, you have probably to do something differently. Like give those guests different roles. Like, hey, you're the shopper, and like you are the fighter, and like really strongly say that's the role you take on. And for something like this, if you want those strategies to emerge, leaving them to chance is probably not going to really make it happen. And then if you have those roles and those strategies, you can start to think like, well, how do we encourage that? Like in my mind, like if I pick up a TV and I'm a fighter, then I'm going to like see possibly interface which says this is a good weapon for this. Like, this is sort of like how you should think about it. If I'm a shopper, I'll see it in the sense of like money and like what its value is. And those pieces of like telling the guests like what this world means and how they should respond to it, I think are what you're sort of going to need to bring into this. And I think that focus of this is how we want the guests to understand their role and what they're doing is going to be necessary. And right now it does feel like you're just like you've got a little bit, your strategy is sort of like hope. Like if we put them in the space and we give them this sort of backstory, they will take on these behaviors that we can see. And I don't think it's going to happen. Like you're going to get people who are like going to be confused about what should I do. And then if you want the strategies to sort of be in a mixed space, it's going to be a similar problem, which is it's just going to lack that clarity. So getting that focus of this is what it means. And I wouldn't be afraid to like be fairly explicit. And like, if someone's picked up a TV and you want them to treat it like a weapon, you know, lean into the idea that they have a role, which is seeing things as weapons. Make that like in the style of the world, the humor. Like this is not, I mean, you guys have, I mean, to me, this is reflective of Dead Rising, the zombie fighting game in the mall, where like you basically pick up all the different items in the mall and like use them to kill zombies. And like you have your own take on these things, but I would look at making that stuff, you know, very explicit from your end. And I think that will create the chaos you want. And it may be, in terms of complexity, like making it a 2v2 world might be a little more complex, but it will certainly be a much better path to the strategies you're talking about wanting to express here.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. But yeah, like I mean, you guys are going ambitious here. I mean, I can tell just from the world you're building out, like you are aiming high for like the fidelity of this, and like having that expressed. So like, you know, keep pushing on that. Be a little careful with your scope. I mean, having a really lovely environment that is full of things to look at and see as part of the space is a nice goal, but I think you have a guest experience here that you want to make sure you hit. And I would use that, like what we want the guests to do and how we want them to understand that as your primary deciding force. And environment design, all that stuff, like all the details that I know you guys can do. Just be careful about, you know, like I said, the guest experience here.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Team 37. And next team up, Team 38.
Hello.
Hello, Team 38. All right. I've got a Team 38 interim 2. You guys are looking at what, 4 guests?
Yeah,
4 guests, yeah.
And anything special about running this, presenting this? Do you want?
Yes. So basically, our game have 2 characters. So if you are the first one to create a room, you will play as like the first kind of character. But we kind of want you to play as like the second character first, and then if you want, you can play as the first character again. Yeah.
Okay. Then I created the room.
Yeah.
Okay. And he's creating the room.
Yep.
Is it up already?
Yep.
All right. And I will just go ahead and share and start. My screen going. It's clear. Ooh. All right. I'm ready. Toad. Oh man, like there's pressure to read this. There's a timer counting down. For a party with your Toad friends, you can step all your power supplies. Start the party that seems to be created your ghost living there who wants to sleep desperately. Keep away from the ghost and the power supplies as possible. WASD. Flashlight to stun the ghost. Right click, revive teammates, or fix generators. All right. I can fix, I can stun. I'm stunned, I lose. Okay. It's like we'll give him a freeze tag. All right. It's me. You guys, we got That is right. Yay, we won. Wait.
No,
wait,
it's
No,
go.
no, no,
I
Ah, wait.
won. I won the last minute.
All right. I'm gonna recap of what went down there. All right, Annie. So how
Okay.
did you win?
So at the last minute, when you were trying to trying to revive Karen, I sneaked in from behind and then stunned you. So
Gotcha. I was wondering if like where the balance was on that, because like you had Steph and Karen stunned, and I was like the only one unstunned,
Yep.
and it's like this feels like a very vulnerable moment, and I didn't know the ghost limitations, and so
I
know.
didn't either.
So I didn't as a player in this, I didn't know like how to think about what was a good or bad choice here. And that was like I sort of felt the tension of that uncertainty, but I also felt like I need more information to know like how to behave. But so like 3v1, like there's definitely like just some immediate stuff that was working, sort of like kind of understood like it's a weird story. Like you guys have legitimately a weird story. Like you've got these toads and a ghost and a party and generators, and like it's a sort of a lot to take in, but the basic pieces of it are pretty clear. And you have some like and pieces of that work well, like getting in and fixing a generator. Like it's a weird thing. It's like, okay, I need to do that, but they're really clear in the world. And then when we fix them, there's like a little meter that fills up, and all those little things just like clicked. Like I knew what it was, I knew what it meant, I knew how to use it really quickly. So like good work on just getting the idea on some of the stuff of like what am I doing, and reflecting that and helping me understand. And like once I did that, like I knew like who my other Toad friends were, like that, like the start screen has like who I am. I see them. They're obviously on my team. So matching those things, like my brain's like naturally just like, okay, I know that, I know that, I know that, I know that. All those little things. So like I knew how to fix generators. I knew how to revive my teammates. They had that little like I'm stunned thing, and all those things clicked. The things that I didn't know was like all the ghost interactions. Like I'd see the ghosts sometimes, and I would click my flashlight, but I never knew if it did anything. And so like the flashlight is on, but like I could click, and there's like some stuff that's going on that like just like the feedback on it was not nearly as clear as like the feedback on the generators. And so I was like struggling to know what was happening. And then when it got to the point in the world where it was kind of critical, like I was the last one left, I didn't really have any information I'd learned about the ghost. I just knew the ghost could stun us. I was pretty sure that if we all got stunned, like that's game over. But I didn't have any like learned information about the ghost interaction to know what to do at that moment. I really had only learned how to work with stunned companions and the generators. And so like I'm sort of like I think I had half the strategy information I needed for this world to work and where it was. But it felt, I mean, even with just sort of like half that stuff, I was able to get to most of what I needed this world to be for me to understand what was going on. How does the flashlight work?
So when if like the ghost is nearby and you find a ghost and flashlight the ghost will be like stunned and teleported to somewhere like some random stuff. So it's just a way for you to keep away of the ghost.
Yeah. Did you ever get stunned?
Yes. Whenever like I am like in the range of the flashlight, I get stunned and then I appear somewhere else.
So I mean, I don't know if I ever stunned the ghost. It's possible
Yes,
I never
you
did.
did.
I did. And so like that's a really important moment for this world is when I do these important things for me to understand. And I think I would be especially the idea of teleporting, like that moment of I stunned the ghost and I did it in this way and the ghost got teleported. And those little pieces of feedback and learning are like really important for that. So now if I think about it, it's like this is sort of like where the balance comes in. I can stun the ghost, and the ghost is away and sort of like disabled for a certain period of time. How long that is going to be sort of important for me as well. And like if I've got two stunned companions and the ghost, like the question will for me is obviously like, what is the strategy? Like how do I successfully unstun one of my companions while dealing with the ghost? And that's a little piece of like just timing and stuff like that and managing it. And I think that's one of the things I would watch for in this world is the balance of like, how do you get 3 guests versus 1 guest to have sort of strategy that is sort of interesting and adaptive, and particularly when I think about strategy, it's let's say so we lost. One, we lost and it was a surprise. So like that moment of the game ending and like who won and like that victory moment is another piece of information that's important for the guests to get. But I think your goal is whoever loses should be like, oh, I almost won. And if I play again, this is what I'll do differently to like sort of correct for the mistakes I made. And right now, I don't know what I would do differently for the world.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
That from Ghost perspective, because I also played Ghost last night during testing, I learned I lost last night. And we talked about it and I learned how to strategize from Ghost perspective. So I know how to sneak from behind. But that's from Ghost perspective.
Yeah, and I think that would be a thing I would just sort of like, you should be able to, as a team, talk about like what is beginner strategy and what is advanced strategy for a world like this, and like how do you sort of get that to emerge, and then how do you get the guests to understand it? I think that's gonna be a big thing. Mo, you were watching. What were?
I was doing HVAC.
Oh really?
So, yeah, sorry. I had to step away for a moment, so I did not get to watch this one.
Well, so I think overall you've got like the foundations of this working. I think it's going to be. I think I would now aim for that clarity of what are the guests like, how do the guests know what to do, and especially that like it's not a world that necessarily needs to be replayable, but I think you want that moment of I'm at the ending. You want guests to sort of want to play again, and that motivation comes from I know how to get better. Like I know how to correct for the mistakes, and that those mistakes want to feel like they were my mistakes, not the world sort of enforcing like confusion on me. So every moment, like if I get frozen, if the ghost stuns me, I want to be like, oh, I should have like avoided that. Or if I almost missed the ghost, be like, I want to feel like my aim could get better and little things like that. So it's definitely in the space of like tweaking and tuning for this thing. So like the feedback is clear for what this means and how I understand it. And then like there's little things on like, if I just did it this way, I could get better. And I think that's a lot of what to look at. It's definitely like you've got, I'm just trying to think, the controls for the character felt a little weird, which is camera, like the mouse controls the camera. I kept thinking it controlled my character as well. Like I kept expecting mouse to control camera where the character points. And so I definitely had a lot of moments where I was trying to use the flashlight and aim, and I was aiming with the mouse. but I had to aim with the keyboard. And so just like from a control standpoint, it didn't, I never had the desire to be pointing in one direction and have the camera point from another direction. And your controls let me do that, but I'm not too sure that's a control system that your world really wants and needs. It feels more like it should be mouse, gives me sort of mouse look, but that controls the orientation of my character, and I use forward on the keyboard to move forward, and I get much more of a WASD, I get more of like a traditional control scheme for stuff. Especially this is going to be about aiming at the ghost and sort of like trying to track the ghost down. That was so like just from a control standpoint that I felt that. Some of the sound effects were a little weird. I felt like there was a screeching monkey in there. I don't know if that's true or not, but I read there was one sound effect that kept standing out a little bit on that level. But like I said, for the most part, this felt a lot like getting that balance and getting those 3v1 stuff to really, really come together and be exciting. How do you want guests to watch this, by the way?
Basically, like advice, like as we get the advice from last like interim, like we're going to for round 5, we're just letting the each player to share their screen, and we can like switch to like different players. But if we are going to make this in the festival, we're going to make a observer mode where you can like easily change like characters to follow or to view like the whole battleground as a to what happened like in the whole battleground. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think the sharing and swapping be a thing to practice and get a feel for like how that works. But right now, very playable. Definitely able to go through the loop and feel all the pieces of it. And I think it's very much an iteration space. So good place to be for interim. Cool. Good work, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, moving on to team 39.
Is Mo still around, or is he dealing with stuff?
Mo's here.
I'm right here.
Yeah. If you want, I think you can just you can download and play the editor version if you want. I don't think we made any changes since we submitted.
Okay, let me see if I can get that.
Yeah. So if you play the editor version, should link up with playing the build version.
So I know what to send Mo. That just be the where are we? Synced into. Is the editor version submitted?
Oh, from the working folder. Oh, I didn't submit the zip, but if Mo wants to grab it from the working folder.
Oh, in the working folder. All right, I can.
Yeah.
I can zip that for Mo.
Yeah. No, we haven't made any changes to the project since then. I don't think.
All right, Mo, give me one brief second, and I will.
I meant to do it on my laptop. Let me see if I can get it going. The new computer. I don't have Unity.
Yeah. So once again, we're 5 to 10 people. So should we also play our world?
If more people will make the experience better, like let's go for it.
Okay. Yeah. Let's try it. All right. Team, if any of you want to play the world as well, that will be fun.
All right, Mo, I'm gonna. Here's a link in chat to the zip file.
Yeah. If anybody else in the class wants to just download the build off of Perforce and join in, that's fine as well.
Yeah, Ryan, do you want to send in a directory for everyone if they want to?
Yes.
Team 39, right?
Yes. Shit. This should be the right path, I think.
We have 2 players in the room right now. We can have up to 10, right? Okay, 3 players.
Yeah.
4.
Is someone sharing screen?
Yeah, Dave, do you want to share screen or do you want me to?
I'll go ahead and share screen. And
Okay.
I'm downloading.
All right.
Very cool.
I'm gonna go through the tutorial.
Yep.
Right. Lots of stuff. J, K. All right. Join your fellow coworkers. All right. What character you move around? Pick it up. Move stuff. Iron pile, stone pile, sand pile. Oh wait. Interact building. So K is used rarely, J is used most of the time. And slow down. Cross stone. What is stone do? Blocks. Right. And iron is iron. Interest. It's done, but it takes time to charge. Gotcha. Alright, this takes stuff away. Alright, looks like once things are here, they're here for good. Slow through that, see what happens when I walk through the trap. Done! And... Alright. I lost. Well. All right.
All right, yeah. Just hit the spike start playing button.
Let's do it. All right, there's the path. Like, want to get it, bend this down. What's going on here? Maybe it's trying to figure out like why is the line changing? A lot of
If you look at the top corner, you see the objective is different from the tutorial pop-up corner.
Alright, so we have to force this spike path. like the hero is cheating. It's not- Like, how is the hero going to do this if I can't go through that? Oh, great. And now we like it's now not possible to get to the stone pile. All right, let's see what happens. One.
Yeah. Those are the only levels we have for now, so he can exit out. Yeah, how's that?
So we had what? We had how many people in that? We had 7 going or more. I saw 7 at one point.
I think
It's like-
7.
Yeah, 7 to 8.
Quick question. Something
Yes.
get it up. For those who played, do you feel like playing it once through, you learned something that would help your strategy the next time?
I think yes. So going all the way through, there's definitely some spots where I was like, the world was frustrating. Like the world shouldn't do that, or it didn't do what I expected. So there's parts of it where I was like, I don't know how I would resolve that. Like I'm worried the world would fight me again in a way that was frustrating. But there are definitely parts where it's like the core of this, like 7+ people building something, and just like this path emerging was totally working. Like I sort of grabbed some stuff and I put some things down. I turned around, and all of a sudden, like there was like 20 more things already placed in the space, and so the whole idea of a little army of minions building something is totally happening, and like that emergent cooperative behavior. I think that's happening, and there's like sort of a natural like organization that's happening. And like so just the simple setup of these 3 different pieces and the hero coming in the path, I think there's definitely that's working. Now like to do the objectives and like get this clarity, like some of the stuff is like that path that the hero does like is great for guiding the guest and saying this is what's going to happen and how you should be thinking about it. Because if we didn't have that, like that end scene would have been really, really frustrating, right? It would have been a surprise, and the hero would have been going through nooks and crannies and like gaps in the walls that we had no idea like how to reason about, and it would have, I think no one would have liked the ending. But because you gave us that path, we knew ahead of time what the hero was going to do, and we could basically mentally prepare ourselves for some of the frustration of he went that way, and like that feels a little cheap. And I think that's a big part of like what the iteration of this needs to be, is making all of the moments of defeat or like the things that didn't go quite right feel expected and feel like feel fair, like feel like they're earned, as opposed to feel a little bit random. And right now, the thing I felt the most was I put a block down and the line moved in a way I did not expect. And like that's okay for a little bit of the stuff. There can be surprises, but there was a lot of moments of like, we're trying to do this. And then all this, like the hero found a path through the pile of stone, and like we can't go through the pile of stone. So like the hero is already breaking a rule of the world that we learned. But the nice thing is that I felt that like I knew enough about the world, and you had enough signals in terms of the feedback that I was using those tools and those rules to like understand the world. And so I was getting frustrated sort of in the world context. Like I felt like the world was breaking its own rules, which means there are rules to be broken and there's like signals for it. And I think that would be the thing like I'd really look at is how do you communicate to the guests what these 3 things you place down do in a clear enough way that they have an ability to predict what how the hero will interact with them. And like one of the things you're making your life a little bit harder, which is you have no sense of a grid or like snap or like anything that seems to align objects. So it's like you place that object free form in the space, and now it can be like pixels off, and like there can be slight gaps and things. And I think I would think hard about what is the visual language of a path versus a wall, and how do I, as a group of guests, start to develop an understanding of we're building a path, and we're building a path by using these walls to sort of like block things in. And like a choice you guys made, these pillars have these like weird vines around them, or like they're sort of like ornate, and they don't at all say barrier. They say the center part's clearly a barrier, but where is the edge? Like where is the boundary to this? And I think that would be the one big thing I felt frustrated about was the visual style of what is a barrier and what does it mean for a barrier to be complete, like to be no gaps versus to have gaps, wasn't clear in this. And I would really want to be able to look at this and say, oh, like I can't place there because I can see the overlaps and that's not right. And then the hero can't go that way because that's clearly a complete barrier. And I think that's where a lot of my frustration sort of stemmed from, was that ambiguity of what is a complete barrier versus a barrier with holes.
Fantastic feedback. Thank you.
Mo, were you weren't able to play, but you're able to
I was able to watch. Yeah, I mean, I really like this idea. I love the idea that this is kind of an impossible task by yourself. So the more players you have, and then balancing that with coordinating with your players, I think would be the sweet spot for you guys, where if the team playing is communicating and kind of has a plan of what to do, and people are getting the different types of materials so that they're using their time efficiently, I think that's where I would try to design to kind of evoke that kind of communication amongst the team. I asked my question, I think Dave dug into that quite a bit, that like by playing it once, you learn quite a bit of what your strategy would be the next time. And especially if you can learn that strategy kind of collectively through experimentation. Again, I think that's the kind of sweet spot for you guys. As far as the art in the world, it's really nice art, but it feels very uncohesive right now. You have kind of a cute demon character, and the hero character looks fine, but then you have kind of these really straightforward choices in terms of like the color palette of like the lava beneath there and all the stone. And I like the kind of demon character, and maybe it's purple just as a temporary thing, but I kind of like that big bright color on him. And I'd probably try to make the world a little more appealing. Think about the palette, the shape language you're using for everything, and I'd make it kind of big and bubblegummy.
Team, how do you want this world to play at festival? Like, what do you want guests to? What do you want that moment to moment play to look like?
So our team was actually kind of running into a little dilemma. in which you were designing too much for festival and not enough for round 5.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think the dilemma is the moment to moment is a lot of what you guys experience is that there is a curve for the guest. Like you're placing things down and they're not kind of working, but then you gradually learn how to like work with random teammates, and there's that curve of like there's frustration, but that's in part because I have to learn how to work around the world and I have to learn to work around my teammates. Right. And then I saw G-Sub put in chat, someone keeps putting traps on me, and that made me smile because that's like definitely an intentional moment. So that was really funny. So for the festival experience, we do want people to like drop in and drop out of rounds. Say maybe that there's like 10, 20 rounds, and then like you play a few, it's like, okay, that's enough for me for today. I'll just come back once the entire castle's finished. But for round 5, we were thinking that we only have three levels, and the guest is not quite expected to play through all levels, but it's much more manageable for the guest to play through every single level.
Well, one thing I was wondering as I was playing was, do you want me as a guest to feel like I'm playing the level, I'm playing the hero, or do you want me to play my teammates in the sense that like where are the obstacles? Because you give me a tutorial, which is
Right.
single player, and like I run into the challenge of the game, right? The tutorial taught me that this is not as easy as it looks. Like the major takeaway I got from the tutorial was the hero will behaves in ways that are surprising, in that the hero has a more complicated pathing algorithm than I expected. And that's sort of like, for me, one of the big takeaways of the world is the hero is unpredictable, and you're gonna have to learn to work with that unpredictable nature. What you were talking about, though, is like this is less about the hero is a challenge to work with, and building a path that the hero will navigate is a bit of a challenge in itself. And it's a bit more, the hero, like if it was just you and all the time in the world, this isn't a hard challenge. Like building a nice, clean path is like very doable. But the challenge is like you've got, 8 other people in the room who have their own plans. You have no natural way to communicate with them. And like that chaos of like, we're all trying to do the same thing, but we have our own way to approach it. That's where the challenge is. And it sounds like that's more what you want this world to be, is like
Yes,
that
that is
weird
where I
tension
want
of
to be.
we're on the same team, but we can't help but interfere with each other. And I think the thing standing in your way right now is the hero. The hero does not provide enough predictability for that to really work. And I would look at ways to bring that more under control. And then another thing, like obviously, like you got some little things to like watch for. We successfully walled ourselves in play, and I was like, whoa, we can do that. And so you might also watch for like level breaking behaviors. And it's definitely like it's really interesting, like being restricted and being sort of like, the fact that the walls you put in affect you, and like the sand traps affect you. But it's, if someone wanted to grief this, they just go in and they'd build a wall around all the resources. And you might need to think a little bit about, can you manage that? A simple solution would be like, once a wall is built, I can't take it down, right? Can I?
No, you cannot.
All right, that might be the most direct way to solve that problem, is I can deconstruct as well as construct. But you have your world, for better or for worse, your world is setting itself up for griefers, right? Because this is collective. So I think you'll need, in some sense, the ability to do and to undo as part of the set of powers you give to the guests. Because obviously, like if I had the ability to destroy walls, someone could go and start just like destroying walls and like fight against progress. but I still have the power to put those walls back in. And so it's kind of now the collective will of the builders to like manage people who are fighting against their goals. But if you don't give me the power to undo what someone has done, then they have that permanence lends them special griefing powers. And like we accidentally griefed ourselves, which was we boxed ourselves in, and it was like it was a nice moment of discovery. It's like, oh, look at that, we have that power. But I think I'd watch that as well. As like, how do you get the guests to be able to do what they need to do, and not accidentally like ruin their chances. You guys are also aiming, like you said, for that bigger like drop in, drop out, and those moments. How do you want me as a guest to understand what that culminating moment is? Like, is this because you talked before about like almost like on the hour there's like a
Right.
watching event?
We're kind of moving away from that because it's a lot and we'd rather build on what we have. So as of now, it would probably just be it wouldn't be someone walking through the levels. It'd just be like showing for each level what was success, whether you succeeded or what was failure, and then it would show like the success rate for the entire castle. And so if there's 10 levels and you like passed 7 of them, and it's like your performance rate was like 70% passable, something like that.
Okay. I mean, I think the pattern you have in place right now is pretty strong, and so getting that to work for like next week and making it feel like a collective force of 10 minions successfully strategizing and building and like sort of winning despite the social challenges of the building is the right thing to target. And then if there are ways to leverage that for festival in terms of like guest experience of like different levels and things like that, it's good to like have your eye on it, have a sense of it. But yeah, the focus of make this moment interesting, I think is definitely where the right focus is. And getting some of that iteration, like some of the UI, like the instructions that we need to get 5 traps, like probably wants to be a little bit clearer, but like I like that as a motivating goal as well. But yeah, overall, good choices. I think you've got like a really compelling experience already. So you're very much in the iteration space.
Okay, last question. Mo, Dave, did you guys have fun?
I had fun. And then it was my fun was mixed with frustration. But I mean, I would say my fun was tempered with like whenever you place something that's incomplete, like there are features that aren't there, and there are bugs. And my reaction was like the fact that we could wall ourselves in was effectively a bug. Like was not really design intent. And then my other reaction was like the frustration understanding like how the hero figured out its path was sort of a design bug as well. Like that confusion I felt over like how to understand stuff was like an understood part of a work in progress. And so the basic motivation of like I said at the beginning, we're working to build something, and when I kept turning around and saw more stuff built, that was especially compelling. Like that feeling of a small sort of anonymous team building this collective structure. I felt that, and I like that. I like that experience.
I didn't get to play it, but I think the best feedback I could give is that it looks like something I want to play. I was jealous of the people playing, and I think it looks like something that would be fun to play as a group, and the payoff of getting things to work the way you want them to, the way you expect them to, I think would be where the fun is at in this one.
So wait, so you were spectating?
Yes.
Was it fun to spectate?
As fun as spectating goes, sure.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. Good work, team. And so we're gonna take a 5-minute break. And 10:45, we'll sort of like reconvene for the next 3 teams. So exciting stuff. Round 5 in motion. All right, back from a short break. Time to move ahead to the next teams, which means, I believe, moving on to Team 40. So Team 40 is here. I'm ready to get going. You can get
Yes. Morning, evening.
second part. Right. So Team 40, what do you guys want in terms of how we're running this?
We need 2 guests.
You can do that.
And that's it. Yeah.
All right, I'll be one of the guests.
Yeah, and whoever is setting up the room is gonna be their left hand. You're controlling the food, like you're studying the food, and whoever joins that room is controlling the knife.
Okay. Do you guys have a preference of which one is shared?
Just have fun.
All right, who's gonna? So I'll get things going.
So Martin, do we still have a bug in there, like a duplication of hand, right hand?
It could be, it could not. I'm not sure, honestly.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, actually, there's no preference on which role you want to play, Dave.
All right. This is a Windows build.
Yes.
So I guess Steph, Karen, Annie, any preference on who joins? You guys can fight it out.
I could do
Go for it.
Team 40. Okay. Just interim build V3, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna make a kitchen. All right, and I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. This. All right.
Dave, you have to click ready.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Yeah,
Karen, you ready?
Am I ready? Wait. I clicked showroom list and then I clicked on BBW and then it went away.
I see you in the list.
You see me in the list. But when I'm clicking showroom list, there's nothing there. I'll exit and rejoin.
All right, do that.
Yeah. I'm still on there. I already exited. Oh. Alright, I'll do Karen, I'll do login, showroom list, join. Yeah, and then it's just became black for me. I guess Dave, could you start the game without me getting ready?
All right, we'll try it and see what happens.
Yeah. Okay, there's nothing coming on my side.
Whoa. All right.
Yeah, I don't know why this is not. There's nothing showing up from my end.
I can try and do it instead.
Sure.
All right, I will. I'm gonna shut this down. I'm gonna restart. All right.
All right, I'm in.
Are you ready?
Yep.
I'm gonna start game. All right. It's like this is a kitchen full of chefs who need to work on their knife skills. All right. Left hand, press and hold space to steady the ingredient. Move the mouse to counter ingredient slipping. All right. There we go. All right. Ah, got it.
So it's one of you the left hand, one of you the right hand? Is that
I
what
am the left hand.
I'm the right.
And Dave, you have already lost a finger.
How did I lose a finger? Up, up, up. Oh, we can't chop without a hand. All right. How do we know when we're done chopping? That piece is good.
Do you see the counter on the top right corner?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how many cuts we have to do?
Yeah, you have 2 cuts.
All right.
Oh,
Steph,
oh
be
boy.
careful. Don't cut the fingers off.
It's.
All right,
I
wait.
think I already cut a finger off.
Yay!
Do you just have a pinky left?
I can't. It's a little. Maybe. I feel like my
Okay.
hands are very inside this onion. This is a dangerous place to be. Seven cuts. Nice. Oh man. More. 15 cuts. Six. Ooh. Oh yeah, I have a pinky left. Oh, we got three. Gotta get 3 out of this. One more. Nice.
Oh, you guys are good. And that's basically it. What we have for the.
All right.
Yeah. We're still figuring out the difficulty curve and how to make this game more challenging, how to watch. So more to come.
Yeah, but I mean, the basics. Like I don't know, Steph. I felt like we were legitimately working together.
Mm-hmm.
And like it wasn't like I had a ton of different choices, but I was engaged. I was like worried about how we're gonna do this. And actually, when you mentioned the counter, like the world shifted in a big way for me, because it went from a just chop things to each of these is a little bit of a not only a puzzle, but there's a clear, defined goal, which is get this many cuts out of this thing, and all of a sudden, like a new thing showing up. I didn't have a great intuition for like how hard each number was going to be, but it gave me a goal and it gave me a sense of like what are we really trying to do here, and that felt really good. I mean, I think the basic loop of you have to work together to get this many cuts in this, this piece of food. I understood, and like I got sort of like that basic challenge. And there's a really nice interest curve, self-balancing part of this, which is as we get to like closer on the last few cuts, it becomes more dangerous, but we're like getting near the end and near success. And so you get that really nice little bit of tension of, we need 3 more cuts out of a piece that's like really small, and those choices and that strategy sort of has to shift a little bit in what you do. Obviously, the big thing sort of missing for me is the feedback on getting cut. Like right now, I think there might be, I think there was some audio that happened, but I lost a finger. I lost multiple fingers, and I can't tell you when that happened. And I think you guys are like know where you're going with this. Like your intro has 3 chefs who collapse in a fountain of blood. So it says to me that you guys know you want blood, and I think that's the piece that is sort of next generation. How do you give me that feedback, and how do you make this world sort of escalate in a way that sort of hits the humor you want, but doesn't just devolve into a bloody mess and just like total chaos. Like right now, it's like since there's no blood and no feedback on that, it feels very focused on the cutting, and like I have a sense of, I don't know, if I lose all my fingers, is the game over? Is that kind of like the limiting factor here?
Yeah, we're thinking about that, like the winning state and the fail state, and like the ranking system, how we give them scores. We're still working on that. And also, we're considering whether to just put band-aids on the last finger or just like spill blood everywhere. Um, Either way, it's going to be fun to look at, to watch. But if you're using blood, then it might be like gory, not suitable for some kind of like our audience in terms of festival audience, right? So still working on that.
Yeah, I mean your intro. I mean, the intro does a good job of setting up the story. I mean, it's currently it's silent, but it effectively, like, I get it. Like there's three chefs, like they're cooking. They all like take themselves out of being able to cook because they cut themselves in a fairly violent way. And it's like, hey, you, the person sweeping the floors, you're up. You're doing this now. And so you've done a good job of setting the stakes that this is going to be dangerous. I'm reluctant to do it, but we need it to happen. But it does set up, like, I mean, that intro basically promises, for better or for worse, fountains of blood.
Okay.
And I basically assumed that since there were no fountains of blood, it was just a feature that wasn't implemented yet. So I would look hard at what is the fiction of your world? Like, what is this a world where you can cut your fingers off and keep going? And it's like that, you're playing with fantasy and like the really like cringy like fear of like knives and hands, and like going over that edge and being like, yeah, like, oops, chopped off a finger, keep going. Or is it, do you save that for like the finale, like the last cut that really does you in, like releases the dam, and like all of a sudden like the hand like is bleeding everywhere and you have to stop. And I think this is where you kind of need to know your world. Like, what does it mean to bleed all over the cutting board? Because you could play this up for humor and like that, like just sort of extreme stuff, like it goes in the pot, like, look at that, we just put a carrot in, it's covered in blood, and like it's totally okay, I guess. Or you could sort of pull back on that and say it's about near misses, and it's about like, woof, like we're looking a little rough, but we can still do it. We can keep pushing through, and sort of being on that edge of like band-aids and keep like repairing the hand. And at some point that fails. But like I said, I think that's part of knowing your world and how you want this to be and how you want the guests to react. Because I think thinking about the guests watching this is a part of this, and like how those moments are.
Yeah.
Mo?
So can I ask what the inspiration for this was? How did you guys arrive here?
We want to do collab from the start, and then we're running out of ideas, and then I just looked to my left, which is a cutting board and a knife, and I just cooked that night, so why not? That's my inspiration for life.
I mean, I do a lot of cutting and or cooking, I should say, and you definitely are latching onto something of this idea of like, oh, you kind of forget you have fingers sometimes when you're cutting. And
yeah, the original idea was like the left hand has to be as close to the knife as possible to steady the food, but that mechanism was a little too challenging to implement. We're still thinking like whether we're going to add that to the game, so it's add a little more risk and reward to the game.
Yeah, obviously I didn't get to play it, but I think the more you can make that user experience feel good, right, and noticeable, the better you're gonna be with this experience. Yeah, I think the major thing is that, again, clarity of like system status. How many fingers do we have? Fingers are really hard to motion capture, for example, because when you're in a fist, you just can't see them. So I would maybe rethink that, especially too, you kind of, because it's kind of have these disembodied hands too, which obviously is common for like things like VR experiences, but that is overtaking the fingers being detached, right? Is that you have like these kind of ends. So it seems like you need to balance that more, and maybe, you know, a simple suggestion that, not saying you should do this, but maybe start thinking in different directions of like a health meter for the hand with just feedback of it getting more and more dinged up, you know, several different hand assets that you're swapping as the hand gets more and more, you know, just make it more and more grotesque. You know, blood squirting out could be one thing, and maybe it could get harder to see what's going on, but there's a lot of room there for what, you know, from an artistic and direction point of view, what you could do. And I think that's kind of a big question too, is like, once you finesse the user experience and get this right, where do you go from there? How do you keep upping the ante in terms of how this experience progresses? Like, are there ways to heal the hand? Can you favor speed? Can Dave and Steph get so good at this that they're like, and like, boom, an onion's done? And do they get more points for doing that? You know, just thinking in different directions of like, you know, how do you progress this from here?
Well, and to that end, the stuff that felt really good, like the chopping is dynamic, right? Steph chops, and it's the cut goes where the knife was. And so I think you got a relatively simple world in terms of like what the world is in terms of interactions. But I like every time the world is like as sort of like tangible and as like direct as you can be. That felt good, and I like that like seeing our cuts up there and like it being like, yeah, that's how we did it. And I would reflect success a little bit through that. So if you can reward, like, you know, is this about thin cuts? Is this about even cuts? So if you sort of match some feedback and reward to like what you want us to take pride in, I think that's one place I would look. And then I would match the negative feedback through a similar sense of accuracy. And right now, one of the weirdest things is we cut fingers off, but at no point was there like a really clear knife hovering over a finger joint and lopping it off. And so fingers don't make a whole lot of sense as a counter for damage. What makes more sense is like the edge of the hand and like where I'm really going to get cut. And I would look at, is there a way to sort of reflect that similar idea of accuracy through the damage and make me feel like, yeah, that was like a little bit of a cut, or that was like right across my hand. And, you know, can you sort of like have that system? And what to me this world wants to feel like is, you know, we are working as a team, and our success and our failure is reflective of like our skill in this. And it would be nice to be able to look down and say we can look at the cuts and see how good at cutting were we. It'd be nice to sort of have a similar reaction to the damage. Like, this is reflective of the damage we're doing. Now that's possibly a tall order in terms of like a damage system, but I would look into like, you know, can you just sort of like stripe the hand with a red line where like the cut was, in the same way you might be doing some chopping and things like that. Are there like sort of simple or simple-ish approaches to this that reflect that idea? And this is a place where sort of like I said, know your world. And this is a little bit of like, not so much knowing your world in terms of story and theme, but this is like a design pillar, which is like accuracy and cutting, right? You want that knife to feel sort of like accurate anywhere it is. And sometimes it's lethal anywhere it is. Like, it cuts through the carrot wherever it's pointed. And therefore, if it's hovering over your hand, you know it'll hurt your hand there. And you can have sort of like the excitement of like that near shave. And I think like your world lives in those like tiny little pixels of like we're chopping and we're getting like super close, and I might look at rewarding the guests for like the cuts that are like right by the hand, and like, you know, I can see, you know, like stars and like little awards coming up like close shave and stuff like that, of like that's what this world gets exciting about. And I think this goes to the audience like watching it. You kind of want, like, what you want to do is you want to push your guests. You want them to not play it safe. You want them to like be riding that line, and then like use like sound effects and so like that to like get that edge of that was really close, or ooh, look, we got hit, and like there's like yelp of pain, and like have that tension of the whole experience be what everyone sort of feels.
It's hearing Dave talk about it's becoming more evident. Maybe the thing to do is just get your fingers out there like this, you know, really haphazardly. I mean, this guy went from mopping the floor, right? So he doesn't have great technique, and maybe you just make the fingers more available, and rather than cutting one off at a time, you just kind of like slowly cut back. Yeah, like some. And then I agree. I saw Christian enter the room, and it's like, oh man, sound design would really, you know, create a visceral response of a good, clean, chop sound effect versus like cutting through some fingers and some terrible sound effects associated with that.
Yeah. On the point of accuracy of cutting out fingers, so currently the left hand and the right hand is at an acute angle, and usually that doesn't happen. It's usually just a 90-degree angle or a obtuse angle. So we're thinking about changing the angle of the left hand so that the fingers being cutting out is more natural. But I mean, what Dave and Mo said, it definitely makes sense. So yeah, we'll consider that later.
I can just give a very, very quick sound blurb because I saw the tail end of that demo. Something that your main thing here is the knife, right? Your knife is the greatest conveyor, or not the conveyor, but what you do with the knife, it will affect how you progress with the game. And I think I only heard a single chopping sound, right? It's just a really good, solid hit on a wooden cutting board or some sort. I don't know if you had a miss sound. So what you could do is the sound of the chopping would be dependent on distance from either object or distance from hand. And the sound of that chop would change depending on where you are, right? So that'll give a little bit better feedback to the players and the guests of whether or not they actually are chopping in addition to that visual that you have up there. So you could have just like a general hit wood, or a very nice and juicy, you know, slicing through an onion type thing. And then as Dave was talking with sort of quasi audience participation, distance to hand or distance to finger, you have a little bit of a vocalization there, right? When you actually do end up chopping the finger off. So you could have gradations of, ooh, you know, it's like you're almost there, or, huh? You're super there, or like, and then finally, you know, if you do decide to go full bloody, then you make that bloody mess a lot more impactful because you're kind of going comedic. With the art style is not necessarily full on comedy, but it's joyful, so to speak, and the thematic element there as well with the introduction cutscene is also kind of sort of starting to embrace that comedy aspect. And so you could really do a lot with more chef vocalizations based off of how close you are to that hand, and not just have the only chef vocalization be when you ultimately cut or chop off a hand or a finger.
Yeah, no, I think those are great ideas, and it sort of speaks to like building that, like reinforcing that continuous interest curve. So it's not just about, you know, success in chopping and putting in the pot, but it's each cut is like a spike on the interest curve, and how do you like build that into something that the guests all feel. I think, you know, you've got like such a great focus, like, you know, it's like it's right there, like the camera's like nice framing on this, and so each piece getting that attention, and so getting that audio, I think, is really going to make a lot of this come to life. But yeah, I think great spot to iterate. There's a lot of things you can add in, so it's gonna be a little bit of like picking your battles and like making that be right. And I think you got some choices about the reality of the world and like where does blood live in all this. But already pretty visceral. Like you're playing with knives and fingers, and I think that fantasy like just clicks for a lot of people. So like keep pushing on it and keep tweaking it. I think you've got something that people will want to watch, but like I think you're gonna get that like ooh, like that just like cringe like moments for everyone going. I think that'd be a great spot to be in. So good work.
Thank you.
All right,
you.
that was team 40. Swapping to the next team. My math is right. That'd be team 41. So team 41. Get the videos up. And anything special about how this one's to be run?
4 people. Oh, actually, no, right?
I'm gonna have to run the host first, so I'll let you know when you guys can run it. And besides that, again, the first person to connect is the farmer, and anyone else who connects is the chick.
Okay. Do you want?
Or
what was that, Jack?
How many people should we have, David? Up to 20?
Yeah, we can have any number, but I'd say like for today we can just go with 4.
I mean, I'll join. I'll be a chick.
Do you want me to join in and share a screen on Farmer?
Sure.
It's a pretty different experience for the chicks, though. It's worth saying, and I feel like it depends on how you want to critique it, but most of the like 20 people are going to be chicks, and like 1 person will be the farmer. So in a way,
how do you want? I guess how do you want that to be shown and shared?
I would say that maybe you should be a chick, just because most of the audience members will be, but you'll have more of an overview as the farmer. It's up to you. I think there's value in both of them.
Well, I guess let me put it this way: this is your world, and the way it gets shown to an audience is under your control. So, what do you want? What do you want shared? I guess is the primary question.
Probably I mean, David, I would probably have you share as the host if I had my pick. I'm not sure how you feel about this, because that's what we're going to do in the real thing. We're going to have the host sharing their screen and everyone playing on their own screens.
Okay.
All right, then I'll share the host screen if I can.
Okay, so David will share the screen. Allow to.
Screen sharing should be available.
Okay.
Yep.
Which 4 of us are joining?
So you guys only want 4 people joining? Is that correct?
Or is it Christian? Do you want to play or?
I'm on a Mac, so if it works, I
can.
No, if not, then.
I think it's for Windows. Yeah, Steph and I and Dave can join.
Wait, I just had a thought, David. Does the host have sound?
Just the background music.
We may, okay, maybe don't use the host. I don't know. I'm not sure. That should have sound. I didn't think about that.
I'll share the host. I'll share sound.
But you're not going to have sound though, right?
We'll be able to hear the music. All right.
I think it's going to be confusing. I mean, we may as well. Okay, Dave, do you want to just share?
I can share my screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Didn't think about that.
All right. So I think I'm waiting for the world to start now.
Yeah, I'll set the game. And go.
I'm kind of confused about what's going on.
I see the farmer is floating in the air. Yeah.
Looks like the steam over here is on fire, and that's it.
So at this point, like everything's burned, so that would be like the end of the game. But we don't have an end state yet.
Oh, wow.
Alright, so should we call it?
All right, I'm gonna close the host.
Quick question. Control. It looks like my character just constantly moves forward. Is that correct? Or is that?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't my first reaction. So like getting in the world, mouse moves camera, and left and right on the keyboard sort of lets me move, I think. I expected to have control over movement forward and backward, like basically stopping and not and moving. And so it was very surprising that like my chick just like took off. And I wasn't too sure if that was, it felt like a bug. It felt like, oh, like something got into the wrong state. So I'm like permanent move forward. But so that was sort of the quick ask. But I'm a chick on fire, and I can set things on fire. And then there's a farmer, and I guess I'm kind of curious, who is the farmer?
I ended up being the farmer, actually.
Okay. I think we burned everything before you could put things out.
That's true, yeah.
And your job was, you had a bucket and we're putting things out?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You were present in the world, I could see you. I don't think I ever saw you put something out. So I don't know if like that was something that I should have seen or not, but just from my perspective, like it was a lot of like things on fire, like low camera angle moving around and just like bumping into fire and stuff like that. My main reaction was, man, this was chaotic. I think from a little bit of like my role, I was part of the team of like chicks on fire, like setting things on fire. So I didn't feel like that chaos was necessarily detrimental to my goal, which was to spread the fire.
Mm-hmm.
And so like constantly moving, constantly bumping into things. Every now and then I ran into, I think, some water and I got put out. I think it was because there was like a faucet somewhere. So like I felt like that was sort of like my main obstacle was the faucet of water, because movement was a little, I didn't have too much control over movement. I could like aim at stuff. And so every now and then it's like, I'm just moving, I'm going to hit that. But like quickly caught on fire again. Never intentionally. There was never a moment where I was like, oh, I'm not on fire. I need to get back on fire. Let me do this thing. I think there was just enough stuff on fire that just happened. And just a lot of like bouncing around, bumping into things, and like seeing things on fire. So it's definitely like the goal of the chicks is to like just create chaos. I felt like I was part of chaos. It did, I mean, as I was going through this, I was like, how would the farmer manage this? I sort of felt like my speed and the amount of us, just like, it definitely seemed like there was no way the farmer could manage this. So it wasn't at all surprising that we successfully burned everything in the barn. And which, you know, from a, like, since I was on Team Fire, made sense in terms of goals, but it definitely made me sort of wonder, like, how does this go beyond sort of like the chaos of fire and into something that sort of feels more balanced? And I guess from what you guys are building, like, where do you guys want to find this balance?
So this is actually something that we talked a lot about. We went through like this big revamp over the weekend where we made like, because at first it was only a few objects were able to be burned and it wasn't chaotic enough. So then we made everything able to burn, and now it's like way too easy for the chicks. So, but it feels more fun this way. So we're thinking that instead of the farmer having to put everything out, it's just a matter of how long he can keep things alive for. Or have the farmer be some sort of boss or AI. And so the chicks will always inevitably win, but the fun is about getting there.
Yeah, and I think this is, I mean, balance is going to be tricky here because you're potentially building an experience which is like 4 to 20, and like that's a big difference in like what the world supports. And like the strategy, like if there are only 4 of the little chicks as a team, like now I might be like, well, like how do we split up? Like how do we actually coordinate? But like if there's 20 of us, I don't have to, like, there's just sort of like enough natural, like, well, there's chicks over there, so I'm gonna go this way. So I get enough natural like simplicity of a mass strategy that it's not that big of an issue for me as a guest on that side. And I think that's one thing to stare at is what guest experience are you designing for? Like, is this being designed for legitimately like 4 guests coming in and like 4v1, or is this like really only being tuned and designed for like a certain level of guests? And are you taking on sort of a scaling factor of like how to make this interesting for a bunch of different numbers? One thing I definitely felt as I guess on the fire side was I understood fire, I understood movement, but I didn't have a good sense of success, failure, or progress. And like as all I could really, like the only signals I was really getting was that's on fire, and I'm on fire, and that was kind of it. Like I didn't have a good, like, oh, there's stuff over there, it's not on fire yet, I need to figure out a way to set it on fire. I think this is a little bit like in the balance of control. Like right now, like I'm just, there's sort of like nothing holding me back. Like literally, like there's no way to stop myself. I could bump into a wall and get stuck. But I would look at, what is the strategy for the chicks, right? Like what do you want that group to be doing, and like what are their obstacles? And I think the question of what does it mean to be good as a team of little chicks on fire, and that I might use that to focus your design of like what do you want them to sort of coordinate around? Is there a way to play this and then as a group be like, oh, like we should do this instead, or we could do this better? And I think the controls right now sort of say there's no way for me to be good at this, because I don't have much control. And so I think that's one part of it. And then the results of my actions, it's not clear there's any like nuance or like any interesting choice beyond like aiming at things and just like there was a lot of like hitting things that are already on fire, for instance. And I think that was also something that was influencing my understanding of the world, is like a lot of my actions like didn't have consequence, partially because I'm on fire, it's on fire, and like it's still on fire. And so I think that is another thing to think about, is like as I, the guest, am going through this world, like what am I thinking about? What am I trying to make happen? And sort of what am I building to? And like what does that look like in aggregate with a bunch of guests? Mo, got thoughts?
I was as a spectator, I was pretty thoroughly confused the whole time. It's really kind of counterintuitive to play as a chick and be on fire. You would think you would not want to be on fire if you were a chick. You'd think that'd be an uncomfortable state of life to be in. And it feels like, you know, if you think back when I talked to you guys in Fundies about like Unity and making good design decisions, like what are you trying to get at with the chick? It seems like you wouldn't want players to light these chickens on fire. And it, again, is just like a little confusing why not just play as fire, right? And be able to just like write fire on the ground. And the more you get hit with water, the more your flame goes out. And, you know, what is the chicken bringing to the table in terms of the experience? Because it's not evoking any sort of reaction from the audience. They're like, oh man, we shouldn't light these chickens on fire. It's like, oh, we are fire chickens. It doesn't make any sense to me. You know, there's a huge disconnect there. So think about what you're trying to accomplish with those decisions and why you're making those decisions. From an art point of view, I don't think the 2D sprite quite fits the aesthetic of the environment. You have really kind of cool cross-hatched 3D assets that are looking quite good, but the 2D sprite is much different than that. And then on top of that, the fire, you have this very large pixelated particle systems for the fire. So I would probably choose one of those three directions and design around that and make that a bit.
You have the fire and then the sprite you mentioned.
The sprite, the fire, and then the environment all feel like three different. What's that, Jack?
Sorry, which one was the sprite?
The chick is a sprite, right? It's a 2D sprite.
No, it was 3D, but that's interesting.
Okay. It didn't read as 3D. Maybe it needs some animation, or, but it should have a similar kind of cross-hatched art style as the rest of the world. And putting some animation on there would solve that problem. And then it's really hard to see beyond the fire particle system too. And I think that was clouding the gameplay quite a bit. Maybe reducing or just moving the camera up a little bit would be really helpful. Give you more line of sight or path in front of you.
The like Mo, to your point about like what's this world about, I think that's hitting on an important thing, which is as the fire, like what is my goal and what can I do? And I think part of what would be nice is there's a reason for there to be a lot of us. And right now, I think having a lot is just being able to like start multiple fires in a lot of places. But that kind of gets to a short-term goal, which is just start more fires. And I would like a sense of like, why do we need to work together to achieve a bigger goal? The thing that comes to mind is Pikmin. And so if you play Pikmin, it's a bunch of little guys and they need to work together to like lift this big heavy thing. One Pikmin can pick up this little thing, but 6 Pikmin can pick up this bigger thing. And the idea of like we're trying possibly to like get I think the goal of burning down the barn, like if we're fire, like we're sort of like that makes sense. Like there's a really natural, like if our role is like burn things, like not complicated but nice and like understandable. But I think there needs to be some aspect of how do we like escalate that? How do we sort of like go beyond like the simple beginning of like burning hay bales? And part of me is like, oh, like is there a way to stage things? So we need to get more fire here, and once that happens, then we can do sort of next things. And I would look at your level design and like tie the level design into sort of like, design a barn to be burned, right? And if you think about level design motivating like purpose and understanding of like what I should do, and if the major role here is fire, like what is a barn that sort of suggests through its layout and through like what's in it, steps of burning. And right now you just have a big open space with stuff that can be burned, which is exactly what you get. You get a big open space with stuff burning. And there's no, I think there's no sort of logic of, oh, and this is next or this is first. So I think one thing to really look at is like, okay, you've got a stage in sort of the gameplay sense. Like the beginning is this, the middle is this, and the end is this. And I think that will also like do a lot to bring a sense of like understanding of like the role. And that is I think a piece that's missing is like I look around and there's like, you know, classic level design stuff of this is the beginning, but that's kind of what our goal is. Like our goal is like, you know, look up top, it's a giant firework. Like, I don't know, like there is something that kind of like suggests success in this role. And the level can be part of that. Like I said, if the goal is burn the barn down, I kind of want to have a hint at what that progression gets to.
From the beginning, like that, something that you can see in advance that like, oh, I can't wait until we can get that big thing over there, but we can't until we get these small things. Is that what
I
you're
mean,
saying?
I think at the end of the day, mostly, yeah, like, and part of it is like, this world is not about burning the barn down, right? We can't burn the barn. We can only burn the things in the barn right now. But that's not clear. So just from the onset, there is this, you know, lack of clarity about what can be burned, what can't be burned. And because of that, it's not clear what my goal is. Like, you know, right now we're in a simple space, which is just set whatever can be set on fire and do that. And so I think that's a decision as a team you need to figure out is like, what is Team Fire doing? Like, are they burning the barn down? So getting that clarity, and then you want to look possibly at interest curve, and is there progression to that, or is it just a high score thing? Like it's, you know, more things on fire is good and fewer things on fire is bad, and farmer is there just as a mitigating factor between those things. And like that, I think if you have those discussions, it's questions like, is the farmer playing defense? Like, is there like falling back to like this thing? Now, this is a balance question, like to the farmer as a guest, the farmer as AI, the farmer as a controlled AI, because the team is going to be sort of puppeteering that role. But it's also like, what is the experience, and how do you want that to be? And right now, you're more in, it's more sort of sport-like, like it's just like score in some sense, not a meaningful like there's a fallback on the world. And you can, I mean, there's definitely like multiplayer games, you know, the defense attack games, like that mode of play of we're defending the checkpoint and you sort of like flip roles and like whoever defended better like is more like the scoring for asymmetry. So I would like I said, I think hard about the space, the level, and what that means for the guests, and like how to sort of like connect all that together in a way that both is more meaningful in terms of my role, but also like the progression and all those pieces.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Do you think that like in terms of like the progression of this and like as you said like the level design is something that because I can already anticipate like our question would likely be the more space you have, the easier it is for the chicks. And fire clears things away. So in theory, the progression would be giving the chicks more and more, but I feel like it should almost be giving them less and less to keep the challenge and the roles interesting. Do you have like a thought or a suggestion on like how to maybe?
I mean, the most obvious thing to me is the idea of burning down the barn and the barn being destroyed.
Right.
And so like different things that can like burn in different ways. So like burning down pillars unlocks, like brings things from the ceiling down. Collapsing the roof requires like doing this. And once the roof is down, you have to burn the roof. So things are possibly staged. There could be obstacles that like this burns, but it explodes. I mean, like you're that adding complexity, but I think there's a little bit of thinking through. I mean, part of this is like you've got a barn. Like if you were thinking about attack and defense in that space, like what are the weak points? And
Right.
that's like, and I think you want to also think about like the sort of like your nouns and verbs. So you're right now you have nouns which are flammable and verbs which is ignite. But things might be flammable in different ways. Like for instance, like let's say I'm fire. Let's say like we go a little more abstract than just being a small chick. If I'm fire, like rope might be a path, right? So like, you know, the idea that fire can travel in certain ways. And so it might be less about, I can just walk around, but to get to places, I have to have paths open up and I have to sort of use, like I can only travel on things I'm burning. And like that gets into, like it takes the same fantasy and sort of the same fundamental metaphor of setting things on fire, but it starts to give you different verbs. And so that might be another way to look at this is, you know, we can't get up top because there's no like path. But if that rope comes down, then we can climb the rope because we're burning and travel that. Or like oil on the ground and like that leads to things. I mean, like the world of burning things in fire can get complicated and there's a lot of stuff, which means like sort of gets to you guys knowing your world and knowing like what is sort of my goal as fire and what are my rules, like what are my constraints. And I think that's the big thing that I felt as being fire is like I was really unconstrained, like and I can move, you know, I'm only 2D in the sense like I move in a 2D plane, but I can sort of move anywhere. I just bump into things, and I think that getting a more nuanced fire character in terms of just control and choice is part of how you'll get to sort of more interesting moments of strategy.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And like a quick follow-up question on that, like, so like you mentioned kind of like the chaos, which is something that we were going for, and like strategies of like moving fire around, like you said, like the tactics, like the weak points. Like it's kind of I think a fundamental question that we're struggling with to reconcile chaos and strategy as like two pretty like, I don't know, antithetical ideas. Do you have any like reference material, like in terms of like games that have done this well, or ideas of how we could address something like that?
Well, I think the chaos is not a well-defined term. Like it's, and I might look for other words.
Okay.
So chaos implies a lack of control, a lack of understanding, lack of agency. All those like pieces that are just like you don't really want chaos, right?
Right.
So to that end, what do you want? And I think from a farmer's perspective, you want the sense of like just barely being manageable, right? The farmer wants to like be able to manage this and possibly push against things. And I think if you're really thinking about interest, it's like right on that line of it's under control, it's not under control. So that gets to the question, what does it mean to control it? And so like that requires you guys to define. And then get to the fire, like I don't think my goal is chaos. I think I want to have as fire I think my goal might be to burn down the barn. But now burn down the barn becomes a sort of like the main goal. So what is, like I get into the world, like what do I do? Like what do I see? Like what does it mean to start on that task? And like you can even just like put yourself in your world right now and say, okay, well, what do I do first? Like would I go burn the hay? Why am I burning the hay? Is it because it's there? Or is it because it's like it leads to something? And that, I think that process of stepping through your world as that role. And if you give me that goal, then you can ask those questions. Like, how is this getting me closer to my goal? And everywhere I'm making a choice, which is, it's because it's there, you haven't done your design well enough. And then you can also ask, well, what would I really want to do? And like, what could I put in there that would be like, oh yeah, let's go for that. And then you can think about stuff like, if, like, let's say you have in the corner a giant tank of propane. Like, and my goal is to burn down the barn. I may be like, I'm going to try to burn that tank of propane, but it's behind like this. And so I need to get that open first. And so you could use that logic of strategy and goal to sort of like think through what would be obstacles, what would be sub goals. And now you have to like cross-examine that with scope and like the piece of what you're doing. But I think that's the process that leads you to something that has more purpose behind it.
Hey, Jack, or better, the whole team, a good lookalike might be something as simple as brick out, right? You're a paddle, you have a bunch of bricks. There are different modes where you can spawn a bunch of balls that take out a bunch of bricks at a time, you know, and oh man, that's fun, right? Like when you get to those moments. So what would the equivalent be for your world?
Yeah, that's actually a really good reference. Thank you.
And I think intersect all that with cooperation. Like, can you indicate things that as a single flame entity, it's not, I can't do it by myself, but if we come together, like there's like strategy that emerges there. So I think the overall goal of burn down the barn should be a guiding force for design. And then the secondary sort of like the design pillar of, you know, together we succeed, is like the other thing you want to get in there.
Right. Okay.
Jack, also be very careful about, I know this is temp music, but when you have official music, because you're going pretty chaotic, be careful about false representations of progress. I think Dave mentioned a comment of, oh, now there's cellos or something along those lines. And it made it appear perhaps that he did something to cause cellos to happen, but that was just the progression of the song. So keep that in mind as you work with your final music tracks.
That's interesting. Yeah. I didn't even realize that. You thought that was feedback, Dave?
I don't think I mentioned anything about cellos. That sounds.
I think you mentioned something about, oh, now there's another instrument, or so. I thought I heard somebody say that.
I don't know if it was me. I don't think I picked up on that, but I think the comment still stands.
No, I agree. Actually, because I thought that too. It felt like deceptively like, you know, we're in the new stage where, you know, everything's burned or something. I totally hear that regardless. Thank you.
All right. So just think about, but the basis is there, meaning you got chaos. Now you need to get sort of like controlled chaos. So some stuff to iterate. But
thanks so much.
Good work. That was team 41, I believe. So team 42.
Hello.
Let's get your videos up.
Hello.
Anything you guys want us to do about running this world?
So we have two builds. We have an instructions build and a game build. So the instructions one is called Interim Instructions.
Yep.
In the festival, we would have a playable tutorial, but for now it's just instructions. But we would have the guests download a separate build and play that first on their own.
Okay. Would you like us to go through the instructions build and then go to the other?
Yeah.
Okay. And instructions is basically one single player.
Yeah.
Right.
So you could just share it and
do that, and then we'll go to interim build.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Ooh. Hexagon, everyone moves at the same time. We collide, we knock each other. Arena will shrink. pull nearby players, push nearby players away. Over you. Push all players in a long line. Rotate nearby players around you. Bounce 2 units further in the same direction. Jump. I will admit, like I'm reading this and like this half makes sense and half it's confusing. And I'm like, I'm just gonna hopefully pick up on it and understand through the tutorial. So we're gonna moving.
It's a placeholder learning mechanism.
Yeah. I'm moving forward, knowing that I don't know really how this is gonna work. Three classes: artist, programmer, sound designer. Creates a paint drop that moves into. Whoa. Throws a cube that stuns enemies for 2 turns. Sound designer shields allies to protect them from being pushed for 2 turns. All right.
So that's it. So you can close it and do the interim.
I would admit, like the idea of spawning a small little art minion, paint minion, like why would you choose anything else?
Right.
All right. So with that, do you want me to start up?
Yeah.
And we're doing 4-player?
Yeah, 4 people. So preferably you would be the host. And then the other thing is we definitely plan on having people play through several rounds. And currently it's a best of 3. So if you could please play as many rounds as you think there's time for, so you can see more like situations and so on.
All right. Can I start or do I need to wait?
Yeah, you can start. Yeah. Starting is entering the lobby. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Wait. Where am I? I guess I'm picking. Here. All right. Forward. Go there. Visit 2. Whoa. All right. Like, what did the little paint drop do?
It just travels in a line, basically.
Gotcha. Okay, that was not great. And I was team 2. All right, we continue. I mean, like the icons on the ground, I don't know what they're gonna do. I don't know what that just did. It felt like a push. Okay, right click there, see what happens. That was alright. Alright, Annie. Good work. Let's try one more time. Wow. Let's see what happens. Okay, where's it again? Just gonna walk away. Maybe not. I'm stunned. Alright. Go away. Here. Launch a paintball out. Here. I think I did this last time. Bounce forward. Alright. So 2v2, jumping around, trying to push each other off. I think we won, right? At the end, we won.
You won 2-1.
The basics of it, I get. Like I get moving around, but the confusion I felt from the tutorial like stayed through the whole thing. And I'm trying to think back. So I knew how to launch the paint drop. I never had a great sense of what it would do and how that I could use that. And I think that was my reaction for almost every icon on the ground was I can jump on this, but I don't know what will happen. And so I think I have the basics of what's going on. It's like I can jump around. I don't want to fall off. Like I think really good clarity on just like what the goals are. It's like to have the other team fall off and be the last team standing. But when it comes down to the moves I make and the choices I make, I found myself like mostly guessing and having a lot of uncertainty. Like if I do this, I don't know what will happen, but maybe something good will happen. I guess Annie, Steph, Karen, did you guys were there strategies you were finding in this?
I think the programmer stun thing probably works pretty well, especially like if the arena's shrinking. I think I could probably like stun someone there.
And I felt the other side of that. Like I felt being stunned, and I was like, I felt like I was in trouble. Like,
sorry.
It's a good point. It's a good piece of clarity of, like, oh, like if I'm stunned and the world collapses, like that's a sort of an effective attack on me. And the same thing is like I'm stunned. Could you like what's the follow up and could that hurt me? So I think that definitely felt clear.
As for musician, I think I can defend and I can really attack, and I kind of just avoid all the other confusing buttons. So that because most of the time I do not know what those work, how those work, and I kind of just avoid everyone and then keep in the middle. That's how I try my best to stay alive and not fall.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Steph.
So for me, I remembered the like jump forward button. I never wanted to go near that one because I never counted ahead of where I would actually land. And then the like laser beam one, I knew what it did, but I kept mixing up the water like splash thing and then the like what's it called? Like the force field one. So I basically would just land on those and hope that it was gonna do something to people around me. I wasn't sure which one did the spin and which one did the push away. And then for the little like paint drop guy, because I couldn't tell which one was mine and which one was Dave's, I forgot almost immediately because the colors are pretty similar. I don't know if this actually happened, but I feel like my own paint drop killed me. And I was just like, oh, I made you.
Yeah, I think that's like one of my main takeaways is there's a lot going on and it's really hard as a guest in this to hold it in my head of like what these pieces do. And like that complexity feels like it's something that if I know all those pieces, I could probably use them, but getting to the place where I know all that stuff is going to sort of require a level of learning and a level of like just experience that feels out of reach for the world right now. And so I definitely am looking for strategy and interactions that I can hold in my head and understand, and then use sort of as sort of like the main goal, which is like knocking the other team out. So I think there's like right now there's a weird contrast between like the simplicity of the world collapsing and falling out of the space and sort of the complexity of the ways I cause that to happen. And I want the world to be simple, and I want sort of like the complexity come through are sort of like shared interactions, as opposed to the world having sort of these like little pieces of complexity that are causing me to be sort of like questioning each move. And I think overall I felt I was almost more of a danger to myself than even to the other guests, because I think early on I may have like, I think I jumped on a double jump thing. I think I went out of the world and it was like, whoa, like, are these bonuses or these obstacles? And I think that definitely set a tone in my head of like, this is unpredictable, and it made me nervous about just moving and things like that.
Can I add a couple notes real quick? I have stuff at noon. Yeah, I think if the target is festival, it you know, the learning curve of your world might be a little high for people to grasp and sit down and play and have fun. Now, that might not be your target. You might want to, you know, the potential for mastery could take a bit longer given your design choices. My one suggestion for you guys would be, you know, if you're gonna play homage to artist, programmer, sound designer collaboration in your piece, I would try to make those mechanics work a little more together. Like, I don't think I quite understand how things are working now, but for example, if the artist can put down paint and the programmer activate the paint somehow to do something, that would make it more powerful. You know, then we're kind of cooking in terms of those design choices.
Yeah, and I think to that end, I was excited about the idea of picking a role, and like what that might mean. So like you early in that space, like, oh, these are the different powers, and even playing it like that moment of being sort of an asymmetrical role for everyone else was interesting, but it was sort of added to the complexity, and I think that's a place where like this world doesn't have sort of a consistency of like, this is what you understand about the world, and therefore these different choices extend that. Like the paint for the artist made sense in the sense of like dropping a paint drop, but then it didn't. I didn't know how it behaved, and like the programming, like stunning someone, like doesn't have, there isn't like a story as part of that fantasy that I can sort of use to remember all this stuff, and that I might push you guys for those obstacles. Can you like get a world that explains a lot of stuff? And I think that's part of what you're faced with, is you've got a lot of artificial complexity. Like you have these features and they do things, but as a guest, the only way I can remember it is by sort of memorizing these specific pieces of what the world does. And you're sort of like, you have a world, you have characters, you have this like, you know, lovely space, and can you use that to explain like what these different things do? And that might force you to look at, you know, are there some that make more sense than others? Like for instance, the you know, the bouncing two spaces, like what does that mean? Is that good? Is that bad? Is it a spring that pops me up and over? And like, is there a way to sort of like reinforce these ideas with like a metaphor? And then can you get those metaphors to sort of connect back to the world? Some of it may not be like super connected. Like a spring popping out of the floor doesn't have much to do with, you know, the idea of artists, programmers, and sound designers like competing in a hexagon space, but at least it's a metaphor that sort of like says what this is and what it does, and I can start to like build up that sense. And I think for all of your pieces, they all have a hint of a metaphor. Like the icon sort of hints at that, but it's not strong enough for me to like look at, see, remember, and then know the consequences. I think that's a challenge for scope, is you have a lot of pieces, and doing that for each one is going to be a challenge. Like designing both like the look of this, the animation, and the full like feedback system of what does this mean, is for each one will take some, I think, some effort, and you have a lot of pieces. So I think the other thing to do is like, what are some of the essential ones too? Like what is sort of an edited version of these features, as opposed to sort of an expanded group of actions. And I think that's, to me, that's one of will be the major challenges, like getting each piece to make sense. And that's, I think part of that, like I said, is tying it to a metaphor in the world in a way that sort of like builds a more consistent picture for me, but also building the feedback and the visuals and the audio and like that moment of interaction that helps cement in my head what happens. And if I think to your tutorial, like one thing I would want is like, this is extra work and scope, but instead of just seeing the icon, I want to see like a little animation of each one of those, right?
So the tutorial would be a playable tutorial.
Okay.
Like you go through a scene for each icon and then each ability that showcases like the positive, like how you would use it. For example, the pushing icon, you just say like click on this icon now to jump on it, and then you push someone into a hole or something like that, and repeat for each one.
Yeah, I think that's going to go a long way. But one thing to recognize is we played through it and we experienced those, and it still wasn't enough. And so I think you're right to have a more interactive tutorial to like get us through that stuff. But that may not work. And so I think you also want to look at the design of those and say, like, how do we make this stick better? And I think the way it sticks better is basically it makes more sense. Like the sort of like the more consistent things are, the more my brain can build up a sense of how the world works. I can use that little model of your world to predict and strategize. And like that's I think the thing you're going for. And you've got sort of half of that with the fiction of the roles of artist, programmer, and sound designer. And I would look at that, and you've got a little bit of like sound designer's defense. One thing you could do is, can you like tie sort of like the high level idea of, you know, offense and defense on some level? Like what am I good at? And then if I can learn that, if I can learn the idea of defense and offense, and that these icons are defensive icons and these icons are offensive icons, then I'm starting to build up a sense of consistency. So instead of just them being icons that I need to know, that's like, this is used, like offense is about pushing and defense is about like, I don't know, standing still and being like not pushed. And as I get those verbs in my head, then I can use them to better understand and predict. And so this icon here is about pushing, you know, in 3 directions. This one is about like dodging. And I think for me, that's kind of like one of the big missing pieces is those strategy verbs of what do I do and what am I trying to do as related to the world. And I think that's where I would get that idea of like world building and consistency to teach the guest stuff, and pull yourself away from these individual actions have their own definition, their own like logic and their own planning and strategy, and there's nothing really tying them together. So that tying together is what is going to be really important for you guys.
You're kind of also skirting a little bit between a fun party game versus a fun strategy game, and thinking about which one of those you want to embrace a little bit more would really help potentially with the design that you have of those icons. Thinking about, you know, very, very quick, fast-paced party games like Mario Party, their big thing there is simplicity. And so if, you know, potentially if you didn't want to have all of the icons, because you already have 4 players worth of items, and then adding an additional however many 2, 3, 4 world items that are based off of tiles. I know potentially what you could do is you could have the world tiles be wildcards. And because you're not really, once players get used to the way that the world works, that in between time between the players just selecting when they want to move, you have 4-ish units of time between each move. What could potentially keep that interest curve up is that the world tiles are wildcards, And every so often, every couple of rounds, they change. That way, there's only really one thing that you have to keep into account and keep track of. That wild card is that one move, that one special move for everyone to use, instead of having 3 or 4 things that eventually cause a lot of confusion when there's the world gets very, very, very small. But that being said, that confusion could be used to your advantage if you wanted to have it be more strategy based, because then you have to avoid or not avoid. So having that clear distinction of, are you a fun, quick party game, or are you more focused on strategy, I think would help both you as a team as well as the guests understand a little bit more about the end game here and how best to play and how best to win.
Yeah, I think especially just as you're saying, Christian, the idea of thinking about the strategy you want the guests taking on will be important to think through. But you've got to to pull it back to what you've got built. You've got a really strong foundation, like a lot of strong clarity, and it's now about these these pieces. And I think that's actually a great place to be at Interim, is you've got these interactions, and as a team you can look at them and be like, which ones do we like? How do we explain them better to the guests? And then how do we map out from our perspective what we want guests, how we want guests to use them? So as a team, what is good strategy? What do we expect in these places the guests to do? How do you guys play it? You probably have some more insight into that play, and use that to sort of drive your iteration of, oh, okay, we want guests to we really want to encourage them to do this. This is powerful. We want them to understand that. And we want the programmers to do this. We want them to move out and stun. And actually a thing you might want to do is, for all the pairs of roles, how does that team play it, right? If I'm programmer artist, if I'm programmer sound designer, or sound designer, what does that look and feel like? And that might be a good starting point for just thinking through the strategy you want guests to work on.
We were still planning to expand it to 6 players. So each team would have a set. Each team would have all 3 roles, and that's just set.
Oh, well, then I mean, yeah.
Definitely for 4 players, it would also be set to how it is currently. So
And
it's just this mix is the set mix.
Yeah, so that's good clarity to start with, and then you can talk through what is strategy, right? How do you want them to behave? And don't say, well, however the guests want to do it. You are designing these roles, and they're designed to work together to sort of have strategy, have coordination. And so that's your sort of secret design goal is 6 guests come in, and really quickly they learn how to strategize with these roles, and then they execute on that strategy. And you should know as a team, do they know that after the tutorial? Do they know that after 1 round? And is it round 1 is testing strategy, and then round 2 is iterating strategy? Is round 1 sort of fumbling a little bit, and they don't know what works exactly, and then round 2 is the execution of refined strategy. But that's a thing for you guys to sort of think through, is what is the strategy you want guests to get to, and how do they get there?
Well, I mean, I definitely think that the feeling of there's many rounds, there's not a lot of consequence, so go ahead and try something. Because I saw, for example, today I saw there was a lot of intimidation, only moving 1 tile at a time, not stepping on anything, right? Because if you don't try the tiles, you won't see their effects. And it's sort of because it's just trying to move as little as possible, not take any risks, then there's less engagement with the world.
Yes, try something is not strategy. I mean, you have a world right now where the strategy is basically do something and hope something happens, which I wouldn't say is a strategy you guys want. Your goal is to get guests to the point where they are actively strategizing. They're making a choice because they think it'll have positive consequences that will lead them to success in the world. And right now, you don't have that yet. And I think part of the challenge is like, it's not clear to me like what even an intentional strategy is in the world. And I think that's something that you guys need to design. It's like, what is like a coordinated strategy that guests would take on? It feels mostly like you have possibilities, like you could do this, but no intent. And so I think you need to sort of like really clarify what that intent is. Like, what is guest intent in terms of like choice and strategy, as opposed to things the guests could do, and maybe they'll be effective if they try them. So I think that's where I would push you guys on.
And think about it also in terms of if this is, festival, because you're building for a festival scenario, more or less. People in the virtual festival who are going to stumble upon your game are stumbling upon your game. That doesn't necessarily mean they have the necessary confidence or the necessary understanding of games like that. And so as Dave said, if you're going for a, hey, try and see what happens type deal, there could be potential for a lot of discouragement and a lot of an additional dosage of confusion that you may not necessarily want to instill, to have people go around virtual festival and say, hey, go play that game. You want people to do that. And so be careful with how you approach guest experience, and specify specifically for your team and for your experience how you want people to come in and feel the game and then leave or how they feel when they leave the game.
Cool. Well, I mean, a great place to be at Interim is like being able to look at all these options and think about how you want guests to interact with them and piece them together and iterate it into 3v3 coordinated strategy. So I'm really happy to see like actually a lot of options, and having sort of like the iteration be about now like refinement, as opposed to having to add more stuff in. So you have like not only the foundation, but you have like a bunch of features. So it's, like I said, it's a great place to be at Interim. So good work. Now it's that refinement through guest experience that like is a good place to be for like a final week of iteration. So really good work. And with that, that's the morning group, I think. So exciting stuff. I know like the big thing we're getting here is a vision of what festival will be like. And it's still really exciting. So great work, everyone. We're gonna pause for our break, our East Coast lunch break, and the break for everyone else at different places around the world. But we'll be restarting at 1 with the last 3 teams. So see you all then.